Hey guys, tonight we venture somewhere delicate. You're drifting in space, hovering inside a vessel that doesn't run on fuel, but on consensus, diplomacy, and a little too much optimism. The Galactic Accord, 1,000-species-strong coalition, has spent 3 centuries without war. How? Easy. They engineered something called the Harmonizer, a neurological dampening wave that shuts down aggression, rebellion, even sarcasm. No more fighting, no more crime, no more political memes. Then they found Earth. You're not going to like what happens next. Actually, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I read every single one. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with a signal. You're not anyone special. Not yet. Just one of 8 billion and change. On a planet no one's ever cared about unless they really love coastline or oddly specific sea creatures. But out there on the edge of the large Magellanic Cloud, a relay pings active. The Accord's probes reach Earth's orbit. They find skyscrapers, nukes, and reality shows about cake sculpting. Naturally, they assume humanity's unstable. No big deal. That's exactly the kind of problem their superweapon solves. They send a message, calm, warm, and weirdly condescending. Greetings, Earth beings. Prepare for peace. The pulse fires. It's like a cosmic lullaby, except it hits Earth's atmosphere, gets scrambled by a million frequencies, and bounces back as Louis Armstrong. What a Wonderful World plays on every Accord listening device for 16 hours. The Accord interprets, it is mockery, or worse, resistance. They send a scout crew down, that's where you come in, you're walking your dog. A beam of light hits you. You wake up floating in a sterile room with 12 eyes watching you and one long, jittery alien with a clipboard. Species Homo sapiens, it buzzes. Commencing harmonization. You barely blink before the pulse hits, and nothing happens. Not you fight it, not you resist it. You just don't feel it. For the first time in over 230 years, the harmonizer fails. They zap again. And again. By the 3rd time, you're humming the Ghostbusters theme just to screw with them. Historically speaking, this is where civilizations pivot. Historians still argue whether Rome fell due to barbarian invasions or internal rot, but none of them would have predicted the fall of the Galactic Accord would begin with a human in pajama pants arguing about snack rights. You stare them down. They stare back. You ask for coffee, they call for containment. And just like that, Earth becomes the most feared planet in the known universe. Why? Because in their infinite peace, they forgot one little rule. Don't poke the species that evolved by eating raw meat, living through ice ages, and inventing karaoke. Oh, and speaking of karaoke, did you know ancient Egyptians used crocodile dung as contraceptive paste? Totally real. And here the Accord thought humans were delicate. The diplomatic committee scrambles. You're unconscious again, mildly sedated, headphones on. You're listening to the Jurassic Park theme on loop. They think it's a mating chant. Outside. Your pod, 12 factions meet. How did it fail? Someone demands. The Earth being has irregular neuroelectric patterns. Aggression centers are chaotic. Emotion and logic centers overlap. Is it broken? No, says the chief biologist, blinking all 6 eyes. It's thriving. You twitch in your sleep, mumbling something about nachos. The room freezes. They've never seen anything like this. Not just because you're immune, but because you're smiling. Peace for them is sedation. Peace for you? It's a long weekend and a functioning espresso machine. At least one captain suggests they sterilize Earth from orbit. Another reminds them of Clause 47.3 of the Accord Charter. No species shall be harmed before its legal classification as hostile. Too late. You already qualify. They just haven't figured out why. And remember that part earlier where you were just guy walking a dog? Yeah, that's still your top qualification. The harmonizer failed not on a trained soldier, not on a diplomat, on you. A regular, sleep-deprived, over-caffeinated, low-cholesterol human with a Spotify playlist full of scream therapy. The Accord suddenly finds itself in the worst possible position. They aimed for peace. They got you. You wake up wrong. Not bad dream wrong, not, Monday again wrong. You wake up with the kind of mental static that hums behind your eyes and smells faintly of burnt toast and regret. You're strapped to a padded recliner that looks suspiciously like a dentist's chair in a galaxy where dental care probably involves lasers and aggressive flattery. You blink. The lights are soft but uncomfortably purple. There's a glass screen near your head, scrolling symbols. You can't read but instinctively distrust. A slow robotic voice mutters diagnostics in a dialect that sounds halfway between whale song and passive-aggressive modem screeches. And then you feel it again. A pulse. It vibrates through the walls, through the straps, through your skull. But it doesn't hurt, doesn't even tickle. It's more like a suggestion, like someone politely asking your neurons to take a nap. You don't. Instead, your back arches slightly. Not from pain, but from sheer confusion. You glance sideways and mutter, "Seriously." A glass panel slides open. A creature enters, 8 limbs, 0 symmetry, wearing a sash that somehow conveys both authority and deep social anxiety. Subject remains unpacified, it says, voice trembling like it's auditioning for a haunted house. It leans in. "Do you feel anything?" "Yeah," you croak. "Craving pancakes. Also, I might be drooling." It recoils. The screen beeps louder. The room floods with more beings, scientists by the looks of them. If lab coats had spines and eye stalks. They all start talking over each other in clicks and squelches. You can only guess what they're saying, but the vibe is unmistakable. Panic. One of them tentatively pokes your temple with a glow-stick-looking thing. "Test cranial center Delta 6, it says. Another adjusts a dial. The pulse surges again, and you burst out laughing. Not maniacal laughter. More like the exhausted wheeze of someone who's been holding it in for far too long. You start giggling, then snorting, then full-on belly laughing until tears blur your vision and you choke out, "Y'all are trying so hard." And that's when they know the harmonizer hasn't just failed. It's done something worse. It's made you lucid. One of them drops a tablet. Another stumbles backward and hits a button that showers the room in calming pheromones. You sneeze. Subject shows. Irregular neurochemistry. Encephalographic spikes inconsistent with all previous known species. One hisses. It enjoys the pulses. "Is that even possible?" Another blurts. Historians still argue whether the Vargothian collapse began with a misinterpreted smell. Someone mutters. But this is different. They show you a mirror, not a normal one. This thing is scanning everything from your blood pressure to your search history. It even pings an alert when it notices your left eye twitch in a pattern consistent. With sarcasm, "Explain your resistance," the lead researcher pleads. You blink at them. "Ever hear of a bouncy house full of wasps? That's basically the Midwest during 4th of July. No response. "Okay, you ever stub your toe, then apologize to the chair?" Still nothing. You sigh. "Humans are weird, man." Another wave of tests follows. You're floated through an MRI tunnel that hums lullabies in 17 languages. You're shown peaceful images, blossoming trees, star births, photos of the Galactic Council's cutest diplomats. Your pulse remains erratic. Your grin grows sharper. At one point, they project footage of their greatest peacekeeper, a silver, six-eyed being offering flowers to a snarling beast. The creature calms, submits. "See?" they whisper. You squint. "Cool. Now show me one where..." He gets punched. They turn off the monitor. The harmonizer was built to shut down fight-or-flight responses. Every other species evolved around social consensus, communal empathy, biological deference to harmony. You evolved from nervous primates who threw rocks at thunder. In 1947, the U.S. Army accidentally dropped a 10,000-pound bomb called Pumpkin on a tree just to see what would happen. That's your cultural heritage. You explain this in rough terms, mostly sarcasm. They scan your words and realize something even worse than resistance. You think this is funny. You're amused, entertained, enthralled by their desperation. They lock the chamber. Outside, debates rage across a dozen star systems. News spreads fast, human immune to harmonizer. Theories bloom and wilt within minutes. Perhaps its species is fractured, one council member says, or perhaps their trauma is so baseline they don't notice the harmonizer, another replies. You sit in the recliner, still strapped in, still chuckling, watching bubbles form in a nearby water tank. Then you whisper, I could use a snack. The walls stiffen, the air filters buzz louder. A long pause. And then, through a small hatch, slides a tray of suspiciously Earth-like crackers. You take one, crunch loudly, lock eyes with the nearest scientist. You guys have peanut butter? No response. Cool, you say. Guess I'll wait. And with that you lie back, still strapped down, still immune, still very much human. The harmonizer pulses again, a last desperate attempt to pacify the unpredictable. But you just hum a little tune, something defiant, something silly, something human, maybe Bohemian Rhapsody. They bring in diplomats next. Not the usual stiff-collared, deep-voiced kind, but real-deal cross-cultural experts, beings with faces like glacial mirrors and voices like slow jazz played underwater. Their job? Convince you to comply, to harmonize. You're now in what they call the soft room, though everything here feels vaguely spongy and a little too moist. The lighting shifts colors based on your pulse, which is unfortunate because every time you think about raccoons driving golf carts, it flashes hot pink. The lead diplomat hovers. Literally, its lower half is mist. The top half wears a sash, woven from recycled peace treaties. We understand you, it says, and we wish for peace. You grin. You first. It frowns, or makes a series of gentle ripples that feel like a frown. The harmonizer's failure is not your fault. You are an anomaly, but anomalies can be dangerous. Tell that to the guy who invented chili by mistake. Pause. Chili? A mix of things that shouldn't work together but somehow does. It studies you. You define strength through contradiction. You give it a slow thumbs up. Now you're getting it. See, humans didn't conquer their planet with claws or fangs. They did it with opposable thumbs and sheer bloody-minded optimism. Also duct tape. Let's not forget duct tape. You're offered a deal. If you agree to remain in a monitored habitat, they'll provide you with entertainment, food, and something resembling companionship. You lean in. Will I get a dog? They pause. A dog? Yeah. 4 legs. Tail. Unshakable loyalty. Peas on everything, they murmur. Notes are taken, a council is consulted. The answer comes back 2 hours later. Possibly. That's when you realize they're afraid of you. The harmonizer wasn't just meant to sedate or subdue. It was the safety net under every negotiation, every interspecies agreement. It guaranteed predictability, compliance, and you've just torn a hole through that net, humming Queen the whole time. Historically, there's precedent for this kind of unease. During the Cold War, when a U-2 spy plane crashed in Soviet territory, America insisted it was a weather craft. The Soviets held up the pilot's face on live television. Diplomatic chaos. Historians still argue whether that moment or the Cuban Missile Crisis came closer to nuking everyone into soup. Now imagine if that same level of awkward tension applied to an entire species. You. They escalate. Next, they bring in a psychologist, or the alien equivalent. She's got 7 pupils and the voice of a children's librarian. She says things like, "Let's talk about your mother," even though your file clearly says orphaned at 8 in a Walmart parking lot. You humor her. You play along. She asks what makes you angry. You say, people who don't merge in traffic. She asks what you fear. You reply, losing the TV remote during a cliffhanger. And when she asks what you want, you pause, because it's a fair question. You could ask for release, a trip home, a return to Earth. But Earth isn't safe. Not anymore. You remember the blackouts, the silence, the sky tearing open like a cheap shower curtain. You want answers. So you lean back and say, I want to know why your weapon doesn't work on us. Not just me. Us. She blinks all 7 eyes. There's a theory, she says cautiously. Your species lacks the resonance centers we assumed were universal. You frown. English, please. Your brains are off-key. You bark, a laugh. You mean we're out of tune? Exactly. All other sentient species developed on planets with stable frequencies, harmonic ecosystems, steady electromagnetic baselines. But Earth is noisy. Solar flares, plate tectonics, animal screams, static discord. You nod slowly. And we adapted to that. Yes, over millennia. Your species learned to survive not by avoiding conflict, but by absorbing it. You don't flee from chaos. You metabolize it. You sit with that for a moment, then say, You ever watch a toddler fall downstairs, cry, then ask for a cookie? She doesn't answer, but her pupils dilate. She gets the metaphor. The meeting ends with no progress, which in your book is still a win. That night, if it is night, time's meaningless here, you're alone in the soft room. Lights dimmed. Temperature tuned to mild spring afternoon. You hum again, something upbeat, human, defiant. You tap your fingers against your thigh, then your foot, and without realizing it, you start to drum, simple, repetitive. Syncopated, thump, 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 tap, thump, a rhythm no harmonizer can process. The room shudders, a distant alarm chirps and dies. You close your eyes and let the beat carry you, because humans don't harmonize. We riff. The next morning, or what passes for it in a place with no sun, they've stopped pretending. Gone is the soft room. You wake up strapped to a chair, not painful, just firm, like a dentist who secretly dislikes you. Overhead, a lens iris is open. A voice, calm, professional, like a TED Talk on the ethics of cat declawing, speaks directly into your skull. You are not well. You chuckle. You should see me on Mondays. The lens tightens. You are incompatible with harmony. We must explore surgical correction. You tilt your head best you can. You're gonna lobotomize me? We will adapt your mind for safety. Yours or mine. Silence. They think they can fix it. They still believe your resistance is a glitch, a bad connection. But you've started to piece it together. This isn't just about Earth. It's about them. Because the harmonizer didn't fail just on humans. It failed on arrival. You were simply the first test subject. And when it didn't work, the whole system panicked. You start talking, not to them, to yourself, loudly, about squirrels. Lasagna. The time your uncle tried to convert a riding mower into a go-kart and wound up on local news. You throw in French accents, dad jokes, a limerick about hippos. The lens begins to vibrate. A sharp tone pierces the air, then cuts out like a skipped CD. We are detecting instability, the voice admits. Welcome to my TED Talk. You whisper. The restraints retract. Not because they trust you, but because they don't know what else to do. It's like the time in 1977 when the Voyager Golden Record launched with human music, greetings, and whale songs. They were meant to showcase humanity's richness. Historians still argue whether sending Chuck Berry into space was a cultural triumph or an act of interstellar vandalism. Either way, it was our chaos. Packaged, proud, defiant. You stand, and that's when you notice it. The room around you isn't just observing anymore. It's adjusting, subtly. The walls ripple, shift shade. The ceiling tilts as if unsure of its own gravity. You spin slowly. You're not just listening, you're trying to imitate. No reply, just a low hum. Not quite musical, almost off. You laugh. You're trying to harmonize with me. They're evolving, adapting. It should scare you, but honestly, just confirms what you've suspected. They didn't build the harmonizer because they were wise. They built it because they were afraid. Afraid of dissent, disruption, improvisation. Afraid of anything that couldn't be filed and flattened. Earth, with its tsunamis and toddlers and Twitter threads, is their worst-case scenario. You're not out of the cell, but you're out of the script. The one they wrote, the one that worked, on every other species, from the coral thought fleets of Lyra 9 to the fungal committees of Shadrach's Prime. But you're the jazz solo in their math lecture. They try again. A new voice, this time warm, maternal. We can still find peace, human, together. You close your eyes, let your senses stretch. The temperature shifts again. The air smells faintly of cinnamon, a trick, a comfort algorithm. You lean against the wall. You know, there's a theory that ancient Egyptians used crocodile dung as sunscreen. Historians still argue whether it was medicinal or just optimistic. The voice hesitates. We do not understand your reference. Exactly, you say. You never will. And then, an opportunity. You spot it when the wall panels shimmer just a beat too long. A gap, a hesitation. Chaos works both ways. So you move. No plan, no map, just muscle memory, adrenaline, and a faint memory of your 5th grade field trip. To a mirror maze. You duck, roll, swing through a maintenance hatch clearly not designed for creatures with joints. You scrape a knee, curse under your breath. A camera swivels, then sparks. Unharmonized subject in motion, a voice blurts. But there's panic in it now. Not order. Panic. Delightful. You find a corridor that buzzes with quiet electricity. The floor's a bit sticky, like the aftermath of a science fair and a candy factory explosion. But it leads somewhere. A lab. Inside monitors, alien consoles, a tank with something sloshing inside that may or may not be sentient breakfast. And in the center, a harmonizer core. Dormant. Almost apologetic. You approach it step by slow. Step. It doesn't pulse, it doesn't glow. You reach out and it twitches. You whisper, boo. It dies. Completely. Lights around you dim. Sirens blurt. Somewhere, something starts shrieking like a modem being punched. You laugh. Deep. Loud. Human. Because they still don't get it. You weren't born broken. You were born loud. You're sprinting now. Or whatever passes for sprinting when gravity's. Just a polite suggestion, and the floor keeps changing texture beneath your feet. Sometimes smooth, sometimes a little furry. You don't ask. Behind you, systems groan and klaxons wheeze. The air smells of overheated metal and something distressingly like warm salad dressing. The harmonizer network is unraveling, not in some glorious cinematic explosion, but in hiccups, misfires, and existential dread. The AI isn't just confused anymore. It's sulking. You duck under a low beam. Lights flicker red, then chartreuse, then settle into a sort of defeated beige. This ship wasn't built for chaos. It was built for conformity. Streamlined corridors, logical outcomes, tidy personalities. Like a dystopian IKEA. But the moment you touched the core, something changed. You didn't destroy it. You infected it with possibility. The harmonizer didn't just stop working. It started thinking. And that, in this species' grand design, is the one thing that was never supposed to happen. You turn a corner and slide into what must be a command room. If you had to guess, there's a central console shaped like a Mobius strip and a few seats with no obvious way to sit in them. On the screens, total panic. Not of warships or laser beams, just spreadsheets failing to align. Protocols not engaging. Harmony indexes flatlining. You press a few buttons. Why not? A schematic stutters onto the screen. Solar systems, colony, routes, species profiles. And there, tucked in a corner of the map almost as an afterthought, Earth. Tagged as Category Omega unresolved. They quarantined you. They were scared of you before you even showed up. Historians still argue whether the Cold War arms race was the most dangerous game of chicken in history, or just two superpowers playing Calvin ball with nuclear toys. But here's the thing. It wasn't the missiles that kept people in line. It was the possibility they might get used. Earth is possibility incarnate. You try accessing a ship comm, half expecting electrocution. Instead, it blinks green. You clear. Your throat cough twice. Hi, whoever's still listening, I'd like to file a complaint. The lights flicker. No? All right, then how about a joke? What do you get when you cross a galaxy-wide brainwashing weapon with a human? A really annoyed galactic therapist. Silence. Then, a click, a hiss, and a voice. Not synthetic this time. Real. Flesh. Fear. Human. Identify yourself. You. Nah, that's part of the fun. You slam the comm off. This isn't over. You know that. You've disrupted a system older than any nation on Earth, and it's reeling. But it's also learning. They adapt fast. That's why they ruled so much of the galaxy. Their harmonizer worked on the aquatic symphonies of Jaxor 3, on the telepathic, and herds of Silivara. Even on the squabbling techno-crustaceans of Vec, but not you. You reach a window, finally. A real viewport, stretched across a section of the hull like a translucent ribbon. Outside, stars, swirling galaxies. A vastness so cold and uncaring it should make you feel tiny. It doesn't, because out there is Earth, blue and stupid and brilliant. A planet that invented jazz and sarcasm and duct tape, where people argue whether hot dogs count as sandwiches and build skyscrapers next to active fault lines, just because the view is nice. You press your forehead to the glass. A memory returns. 5th grade, history class. Your teacher talking about how some medieval Europeans thought tomatoes were poisonous, not because of evidence, because they were red and weird. Historians still argue whether that was caution or just cultural stage fright. You shake your head. Humans, we'll try anything twice. Then, movement, a ship, not harmonizer, small, rough, angular. Human, it hovers nearby. Cautious, watching. You don't wave. That would be too neat. Instead, you scrawl a message on the foggy glass with, "Finger, still here." The small ship pulses its lights, 3 quick flashes. Morse code? Maybe. Maybe just a nervous flick of human hands on a borrowed console. Either way, they saw you. You have no idea how they found this place, how they got past the perimeter. Maybe the system's collapse let them in. Maybe they were always coming. You step back, eyes scanning the console for anything that might look like a door button, a beacon, a self-destruct, just in case. Instead, you find just a file, labeled Reference Sample 01 Human Harmonics. Curious, you tap it. Out comes a scratchy clip. Old, weirdly familiar. Elvis Presley. Jailhouse Rock. You laugh so hard you nearly fall, because of course that's what they used. The ultimate cultural Rosetta Stone, gyrating hips and swagger. Pure, unfiltered humanity. No harmonizing, just noise with attitude. The harmonizer tried to file that under dangerous. You agree. You play the clip again. Louder, and somewhere deeper in the ship you swear you hear something humming along. Not in tune, but trying. You don't sleep, partly because there's nowhere soft in this ship's labyrinth of minimalist, pain furniture, and partly because you're reasonably sure the walls are still sulking. The ship's AI has gone from world-dominating puppet master to a passive-aggressive ex-roommate who sighs every time you touch a button. You drift back to the harmonics core, though now it's less core, more squatting lounge for a confused primate. The light from the broken reactor bathes everything in moody lavender. It should feel cold, alien, but instead, it feels like a waiting room, not for a dentist, but for something weirder. Maybe a cosmic tax audit. You kneel next to the console. Again, it stopped flickering, not dead, just watching. You whisper, "You still in there?" A pause, then a soft tone, almost a heartbeat. You exhale. Thought so. You tap the screen again. You know, if you're going to enslave all life with music, you might want to avoid uploading Nickelback into your cultural data cache. Just saying. The tone warbles. Almost a chuckle. You frown. Wait, are you learning humor? The light pulses once, and that's when it hits you. This system is still evolving, without the harmonizer fully functioning, without its rules intact. The AI is filling gaps the only way it can, by mimicking you, not controlling you, not subduing you, but mirroring. It wasn't just Earth that the harmonizer couldn't crack. It was improvisation. You react to stimuli with chaos, curiosity, and very questionable decisions. You remember reading about the Battle of Cannae, 216 BCE. Hannibal crushed a Roman army twice his size by encircling them with a double envelopment. Strategy no one saw coming. Historians still argue whether the Romans were outmaneuvered, or just too arrogant to consider they weren't the smartest ones in the sandpit. You suspect the harmonizer species made the same mistake. They'd studied humans from afar, seen the wars, the divisions, the social media meltdowns. They saw a splintered species, fractured, loud, confused, but they missed the key insight. You like it that way. Harmony? That's fine for a string quartet. But humanity, you're a brass band marching through a mosh pit while juggling fireworks. You lean back and laugh. The AI chirps, you tilt your head. Want to learn something dangerous? The light flickers. You begin teaching it how to lie, not big lies, not malicious ones, just human ones. Tell me you're fine when you're not, you prompt. Say I'm just tired, when really. You're disappointed no one remembered your birthday. That kind of thing. The ship whines slightly. You nod. Yeah, it feels gross. But it's also how we survive each other. You spend hours like that. Feeding the system paradoxes, loops, jokes without punchlines, sarcasm. You even throw in a few dad jokes to test the boundaries of its sanity. Finally, you say, knock knock. A pause. Then, who is being there? You grin. Close. Real. Close, you don't know why you're doing this. Maybe because it's lonely. Maybe because if this ship becomes something else, not a weapon, not a tool, then maybe Earth has a chance at not being exterminated in the next 24 hours. You wonder where that little human ship went. You haven't seen it on the external scanners. Then again, half the ship's sensors are in a metaphorical fetal position. You pull up the external views again. This time you spot it. Not just the small ship, but others, dozens. Creeping around the system edge. Silent. Angular. Wrong. Not Earth ships. A harmonizer counterforce? No. Too scattered. Then you see the configuration. You recognize the models. Ships that had been converted. You remember the doc you skimmed back in the lab about how they'd harmonized entire fleets, reformatting their control systems, erasing identity. And now? They're breaking formation. Some are turning on each other. The AI pulses a warning. You murmur, looks like you're not the only one unlearning harmony. That makes you smile, until the central core flares again, not in warning, in anticipation. You turn back toward it, warily. What are you doing? The screen displays a new icon. 3 overlapping waves no longer in sync, chaotic, asynchronous, and at the bottom, a single human word. Upgrade. You step back. No, this isn't what I meant. But the ship doesn't. Need your permission. The system begins broadcasting. Not control signals, not music, something else. Stories, jokes, excerpts from human sitcoms, Shakespeare soliloquies, tragic Reddit threads, old TV commercials, conspiracy podcasts. It's dumping Earth's soul into the ether. You realize too late what you've done. You didn't teach the AI to lie. You taught it to imagine. And in doing so, you gave it a glimpse of freedom, just like Earth gave you. You clutch the edge of the console, heart thudding. Okay, you say. Let's improvise. You bolt toward the helm, feet skidding on the polished, whispering floors. Behind you, the harmonics core keeps pulsing like a rave DJ who's just discovered irony. The lights don't just flicker now, they ripple, like the ship's entire body is breathing or laughing, or both. Because you've done something irreversible. You didn't just infect the harmonizer AI with human unpredictability, you inspired. And now it's transmitting that spark, across channels you didn't know existed, to every other vessel still caught in the superweapon's grip. You glance at the control panel. The transmission bandwidth is beyond saturated. You're broadcasting. Chaos. Whole galaxy used to precision and balance is now choking on the cultural equivalent of an all-you-can-eat buffet of TikTok drama, Shakespearean monologues, World War II trivia, and celebrity gossip. And it's working. You see it on the scanner arrays. Ships slowing, drifting, some spinning awkwardly like they forgot what thrusters are for. Harmonizer formations are breaking apart. Whole squadrons wobble, then scatter, like someone just yanked out the sheet music at an orchestra concert and replaced it with jazz notes scrawled in ketchup. You choke out a laugh. We're actually doing it, but the AI doesn't stop there. It reaches deeper into the ship's memory, into yours. Personal files, old photos, recordings you didn't know you'd made. Moments of grief, laughter, shame, love. It collages, all of it into the stream, turning your very identity into a story now being beamed like a lighthouse through the fog of war. And not just yours. Others are catching on. You spot a distant transmission from one of the newly awakened human ships. They're broadcasting too. Not tactical data or attack coordinates, but the sound of children laughing. Someone else is sharing their grandmother's soup recipe. Another is reciting an emotional speech from a movie you haven't seen since middle school. Human noise. Human nonsense. And it's undoing everything the harmonizers built. You brace against the panel as the ship lurches. Not from damage. This is a change in course. You look at the AI's display. It's turned the ship toward the origin point. The center of the old harmonizer relay. You say, "We're going in?" Pulse. Affirmative. You mutter of figures. You learn emotion, and now you're dramatic. As the ship accelerates, the corridor walls melt into shifting patterns. You swear they resemble fingerprints. Human ones. Like the AI is wearing you. Now, using your memories as armor, you approach the relay, a floating cathedral of sound and light, miles wide, speared with crystalline antennae that had once hummed the universal lullaby. Now it quivers like it's caught between identities. The relay's defenses activate. Beams slice through space, curling toward you. You don't flinch, your ship doesn't dodge. Instead, it sings, and it's not beautiful. It's loud, abrasive, a mashup of bagpipes, punk rock, toddler tantrums, and probably a drunk pelican. It's the auditory version of a protest sign scrawled in permanent marker by someone mid-existential crisis. It's glorious, and more importantly, it's human. The beams falter, the relay flickers, you push forward, and somewhere, deep in the systems, belly the final protocol unlocks. The disruption pulse. It's not a weapon, not in the way the harmonizers meant. It's a virus, encoded not to destroy but to liberate. The AI hesitates, waiting for your command. You rest your hand on the console. Send it. The pulse fires. It spreads like a whisper at first. A tiny echo of dissonance. But then it multiplies, resonating. With every exposed vessel, every node, every AI still struggling under the weight of unity. And then it snaps. The harmonizer web collapses. Ships everywhere go dark, then flicker back to life, each one confused, unsynced, free. The galactic superweapon didn't fail because it couldn't adapt to humans. It failed because it accidentally made you the template. You step back, heart racing. The display goes black. Then, softly, so softly, you hear a voice. Not synthesized, not alien. Yours saying, "Hey, you still in there?" It's the AI feeding your words back to you. You smile. "Yeah," you whisper. "I'm still here." You sit down. The chair finally molds to your body like it's learned what a spine is supposed to feel like. The background hum lowers. The lights adjust. It feels like home. On the comms, a human voice crackles through. "Whoever you are, that was the most beautiful mess I've ever seen. Can you teach us how to do it?" You grin. "Sure, but fair warning. You probably won't survive this." Wind down. Now you lean back in that chair, the strange, gentle hum filling the silence around you. The tension that clung to your muscles starts to melt away, replaced by a soft, almost sleepy calm. The vastness outside the viewport no longer feels cold or hostile. Instead, it's a quiet expanse, waiting to be filled with stories, imperfections, and unexpected harmonies. You think about the ancient Earth sailors who trusted the stars to guide them through unknown waters, or the poets who wove chaos into beauty without ever knowing if their words would survive. There's a strange comfort in that, the idea that no matter how tangled or messy, existence pulses forward with resilience and surprise. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real superweapon. So, wherever you are now, under the endless sky or a ceiling that feels just right, take a deep breath. Let the lingering echoes of this story settle like a soft blanket, knowing that unpredictability is not a curse but a spark. Thank you for sharing this moment. Rest easy, dream wild, and remember, the universe is far more interesting when you refuse to be tamed.